After the timeline of his younger sister's death was revealed through Koji's prescience, does that mean Boruto also knew about it through Koji? Or even thanks to Momoshiki, Boruto knew the full extent of his younger sister's tragic fate? Yeah, as we discussed last week, especially regarding the potential powers Boruto could unlock after gaining full access to Momoshiki's powers, there's definitely a topic in the next 8 minutes that I'm sure won't be boring. Yep, for example, have you ever imagined one thing, if you were given the opportunity to peek into the future or something like that? But in the context of the future I'm talking about, it's not the future of the entire world, not a great war, but the future of the person you love the most. This might sound too hyperbolic or even overly dramatic, but whatever you hear, for now, Boruto is a child whose life is slowly being taken away by fate. The name we know, which has a positive connotation as the son of the Hokage, has turned negative. Too many precious things have had to be sacrificed. And what is ironic for Boruto himself is that, amidst all this chaos, there is one voice that always echoes in his head. A voice that has never lied about the future, and it comes from Momoshiki. But in this case, let's say Boruto will master or inherit some of Momoshiki's own power, and that is the ability to see fragments of the future. Of course, whatever the outcome, this power to see the future is not just an ordinary skill, but a curse. And the reason I say it's a curse is because I think that between Kashin Koji and Boruto, in terms of accuracy, it seems that what Momoshiki sees is absolute. In other words, while Kashin Koji's prescience has many probabilities that can disrupt or even cause things to branch off in a better or worse direction, at least so far, there is no evidence that what Momoshiki said was wrong. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? Because try to imagine. Every time you know what will happen, you also have to be prepared to accept the worst possibility that you cannot change anything. Because once again, saying that the future Momoshiki sees can change is honestly quite difficult, right? Regardless of the outcome, at least we cannot equate the level of perfection between Kashin Koji's abilities and Momoshiki's. Because of course, all of Momoshiki's abilities and powers have different levels depending on the situation and conditions of the battle. I mean, like time stop, absorbing chakra, and others. At least seeing the future is a power and ability that can actually be used to fight against the laws of the universe. But one thing that has been on my mind so far is, do you guys think the same as me? I mean, with Momoshiki's abilities and Boruto's possibility of changing the future based on his desires, will it trigger a major consequence for trying to fight against destiny? But regardless of the final outcome and such, believe it or not, the unwritten rules will still apply. In other words, every decision Boruto makes that causes the future to branch out will have major consequences as a stake. A simple example is what we've seen in the dark future timeline of Himawari and Ida themselves, right? Even if he manages to overcome that fate once, there will always be another fate that could lead to that fate again, or even worse. And that is at least the dynamics of life that are very similar to real life. And it is precisely at this point that the discussion about Boruto's future becomes much more complex than simply being able or unable to see the future. Because what we are talking about now is no longer about ability, but the psychological burden of that ability itself. Kashin Koji may see the future as a map of possibilities that must be traversed or avoided. And of course, the question is, does Boruto already know the complete timeline of Himawari's death? I mean, in this case, Koji only revealed that Himawari died in Inojin's arms. So simply put, we don't know who killed her and how Himawari died. Is that right? And even though we have predicted Himawari's death in the timeline seen by Kashin Koji, and regardless of whether it will become a reality or not, at least the 3 characters we have predicted, such as Jura, Code, and even Momoshiki, all have great potential. But once again, the information Kashin Koji has is still limited to fragments and vague shadows that may not even be complete. From Koji's point of view, the information is deliberately cut off, not because he doesn't know, but because there is a reason why the future cannot be fully known. And that reason is simple. Humans tend to destroy themselves when they know too much. But because at this point Boruto is the deciding factor, plus he is no longer an ordinary human because he has crossed that line since becoming 100% otsutsuki, this is where Momoshiki becomes the distinguishing factor. Unlike Koji, who is cautious, Momoshiki seems indifferent to the psychological impact of the future he shows. As long as it can pressure Boruto, as long as it can shake his resolve, then the future is the most effective weapon. However, there's one interesting thing. If Momoshiki truly sees the future as something absolute, why does he still appear cautious at times? Why doesn't he just reveal everything? The answer may be that even Momoshiki understands that not all futures are safe to show. There are futures that, if seen by Boruto, could cause Boruto to go too far, and that is dangerous, even for Momoshiki himself. Now let's go back to Himawari. If Boruto already knows that his younger sister is on the path to death, then logically, all of Boruto's future decisions will center on one goal, preventing that from happening. But this is where the paradox arises. The more Boruto tries to avoid one fate, the more likely he is to walk towards that fate itself. And this is not an empty assumption. It is a classic pattern in the narrative of fate that even Naruto himself has experienced. What makes this situation even more ironic is the fact that Boruto is not the type of character who can stay still. He is not someone who would say, if that's his fate, then so be it. Quite the opposite. Boruto is the type who will bang his head against a wall over and over again, even though he knows it hurts. And if the ability to see the future really is in his grasp, then every decision he makes will always be overshadowed by one question. Is this what triggers the worst possible future? This is why the ability to see the future is called a curse. Not because of its power, but because of the inability to live normally after knowing it. Boruto will no longer be able to see Himawari as his safe little sister. He will see her as a vulnerable point, as a variable that could die at any moment. And honestly, that's far more painful than not knowing anything at all. Then what about the consequences? As we mentioned earlier, fighting destiny always comes at a price. In Boruto's world, that price is usually not paid by the main character, but by the people around him. And this is what Boruto fears the most. Not his own death, but the fact that every change he makes could drag others into a worse fate. The cases of Himawari and Ida are concrete examples. We have seen glimpses of a dark future, and even though there are attempts to escape that path, the threat never truly disappears. And this pattern is very consistent with how fate works in the Boruto story. So perhaps the question we should be asking isn't, can Boruto change the future, but how great a price must he pay if he tries? Because every branch of the future created by his decisions will inevitably demand another sacrifice later on, whether it's the loss of time, the loss of people, or the slow loss of himself. And at this point, we begin to realize that Momoshiki and Koji's versions of the future are not actually contradictory. They just see things from different angles. Koji sees possibilities, Momoshiki sees certainties, but they both agree on one thing. Boruto's future is never easy. And in conclusion, this is not about who killed Himawari or whether Boruto can truly see the future in its entirety. The point is, Boruto's position, trapped between two destinies, Kashin Koji's version of the future, which still has possibilities, and Momoshiki's version of the future, which seems absolute. The problem isn't just knowing the future, but the burden that comes with knowing it. Because the more Boruto knows, the greater the price he has to pay for every decision he makes. The ability to see the future isn't a way out, but a test. Whether Boruto will be crushed by fate or keep moving forward, even though he knows the path is dark. And in your opinion, with the revelation of his younger sister's fate in the timeline seen by Kashin Koji, has Boruto fully understood it thanks to Momoshiki's ability? Yep, whatever your opinion is, let's chat in the comments. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye bye, Dadabayo.